On this week's Glanbia Ireland Dairy Focus Vodcast, we'll hear from TJ Phelan, a member of the Glanbia Ireland Sustainability Team, on the topic of hedgerows. We'll also hear from Teagasc's George Ramsbottom on the importance of hitting targets with replacement heifers. Firstly, we'll hear from TJ Phelan, a member of the Glanbia Ireland Sustainability Team, to talk to us about the important topic of hedgerows at the moment.
Hi, so today I would like to talk to you about some timely tips in relation to hedgerow management. So now that we have entered the hedgerow cutting season, which begins on the 1st September and ends on the last day of February, it's really important that we go out and assess our hedgerows on our farm and make a plan and see what hedgerows need maintaining, and maybe no hedgerows need to be maintained on that farm this year. So hedgerows are really important in relation to biodiversity and our pollinators, and from recent research carried out by Teagasc, there's approximately 689,000 kilometres of hedgerows throughout the countryside. So again, we can see really that hedgerows are the most dominant habitat and feature on our farms. So it's vitally important that we appropriately manage these hedgerows to maximise the benefits to biodiversity and to our pollinators. Hedgerows are also really important in relation to shelter and carbon sequestration and the interception of water flows. So really there's huge benefits from our hedgerows. It's just about appropriately managing them. So when we look at our hedgerows throughout the landscape, unfortunately some of these hedgerows can be quite low in relation to the benefit they can have for wildlife and biodiversity. So when we look at the landscape and see miles of spirit level trimmed hedges throughout the landscape, unfortunately these hedgerows are sometimes very poor in relation to the quality for biodiversity and wildlife. Where we allow hedgerows to mature and flower, we have pollen for our pollinators in the springtime, and in turn we have fruit and seeds in the autumn time for our wildlife and our mammals throughout the winter. So it's really important that this is allowed to happen. Also, when we look at hedgerows for nesting birds, it's really important that hedgerows are allowed to reach a height of at least 1.5 metres or 5 foot from ground level, so that birds can nest safely in our hedgerows. So if you remember back to last autumn, many hedgerows were unable to be routinely trimmed because of the wet back end to the year, and machinery wasn't able to access farms. So although by accident this actually had huge benefits this spring, where we've seen hedgerows were allowed to flower and produce blossoms for our pollinators, and now in turn in the autumn time there's a lot of fruit and seed on our hedgerows, which will be hugely beneficial to our wildlife and our birds over the winter months. So what I would encourage you to do is to go out on your farm and assess your hedgerows. Maybe decide on a 3-year rotation around the farm, and this in turn will allow for undisturbed areas each year on the farm. Annual cutting of roadside hedges is necessary, but again we can leave the inside of those hedgerows as part of that 3-year rotation plan. So when trimming hedgerows, they should be cut in a triangular way from a wider base to allow light down into the base of the hedgerow, and again remembering to leave a peak of at least 1.5 metres or 5 foot from ground level. Allow tree saplings such as whitethorns to be retained to mature fully over time, and again maybe we should consider allowing some hedgerows to mature fully. Often these hedgerows are actually present on our farms already, so really it's only about appropriately managing these hedgerows. So ideally all we should be doing with these mature hedgerows is side trimming to prevent any encroachment on wires. So again, I would just like to encourage you to assess your hedgerows, come up with a plan, and allow some of your hedgerows on your farm to mature and to flower. That will have huge benefits for our biodiversity and our pollinators, which are so important.
Now we'll hear from George Ramsbottom of Teagasc about the importance of hitting targets with replacement heifers this winter.
Failure to achieve the target live weight in replacement heifers has significant long-term consequences. One of the big consequences is a reduction in milk yield, typically 20 to 25 kgs of milk solid yield reduction per 50 kilos below target live weight. And secondly, there are infertility or lifetime survival consequences as well. So heifers that are below target live weight at breeding are slower to go in calf, and a higher proportion of them will be empty at the breeding season. Similarly, heifers that haven't reached their targeted pre-calving live weight have a increased likelihood of being empty at the end of their first and second breeding seasons, so the survival rate at third lactation is reduced by up to 15%. A key driver of the maintenance, of the live weight of heifers is their maintenance sub-index. So we've produced this calculator here to help guide you through the live weight targets for different stages along the process. And we're focusing in this series of seminars on the target live weight for in-calf heifers and for weanling heifers on the 1st of October. Let's assume in this spreadsheet here that the maintenance sub-index of our in-calf heifer is €0, and that she was bred on the 1st of May, and we're assuming a 280-day gestation length, so our targeted or expected calving date is the 5th of February next year. And we're going to assume in the calculations that our estimated weight gain over the period from the 1st of October through to when she calves on the 5th of February is 0.8 kilos a day. Now, this weight gain is fairly typical of what can be achieved under good management with replacement heifers. So if we assume a maintenance sub-index for our heifer of €0, her mature weight, 150 days in milk in her third lactation, is 641 kgs. We hope that our target weight for those heifers is to calve at 90% of that value, and that's 577 kg. And taking 60% of their mature live weight as our breeding target weight, that's 384 kgs. Moving back then closer to our 1st of October date, if that heifer has 127 days remaining in calf to the 1st of October, and she gains 0.8 kilos a day between the 1st of October and calving, over the 127 days from the 1st of October, we're expecting her to gain 102 kilos before she calves. And this means that her target weight would be 475 kgs on the 1st of October. Heifers that are above this figure aren't under the same pressure to gain the 0.8 kilos per day through to calving, and heifers that are below that figure will need to be fed better, maybe a couple of kilos of meal over the winter to try and boost them on to reach the required live weight at calving down for the first time.
For more information on any of the topics covered in this week's Glanbia Ireland Dairy Focus Vodcast, log on to glanbiaconnect.com or contact your local Glanbia Ireland representative or call in to your local Glanbia Ireland branch.